Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to remind you the challenge I gave you last time. We all see whenever you read the newspapers and you read social media and you read anything about our country today, it's almost like we're spiraling down into a deep hole. And but it is important that we are here. Jeepers, I can see Mark Molota all the way from Polokwane. That's wonderful, eh? Gee, that's wonderful. It's good to see you, my brother. We need to keep, what is the real job of a leader is, one of them is to be a hope bearer. A hope bearer, because otherwise we're going to get into a depressed syndrome and the whole country is just going to go down the drain. And so we need to hold hope. And the hope that we have is in the National Development Plan. And I looked at this. This plan was drafted for 2030, and I counted and said, this is 2016. So it's only 14 years left. Am I right? Is my math right? Tell me you're a math man. Am I right? And some of us actually, by that time, would have long retired. Nhleko, 15 years from now, we would have retired. But it's you who needs to make sure that this vision happens. Most of you who are young, and we know the key challenges facing this country is poverty, unemployment, and inequality, and we have to tackle these challenges. If we don't, is what we're going to see in Hammanskraal, we see in the Limpopo, we see it all over this country. And I asked you to go and read the chapters of NDP. Where are we? All right, move on. Yeah, and we said lots of them there. There's about 13 chapters, if I'm not wrong. Economy and employment, South Africa in the region and the world, social protection, economic infrastructure, transforming human settlements, building safer communities, environmental sustainability, improving education, building a capable and developmental state, inclusive rural economy, healthcare for all, fighting corruption, and nation building, and social cohesion. And we ask people to choose. But after reflecting, I realized that it's going to be very difficult to do all these things. And I decided that I can't count more than 5, so let's choose 4. And because once you do too many things, it's not going to work. So the next slide there, can you go on? I said, I think the most important one is the economy and employment. Do you agree? The statistics that have come up that the employment rate is just going up and up, but even more important is young people who are unemployed. And the second one is economic infrastructure. And the third one is education. And the fourth one is fighting corruption. Corruption is our enemy number 1 now. It's becoming so cancerous that if we do not actually uproot it, we're going to be a failed state. But I believe that you and I can play our role in fighting it and making sure that we do not become a failed state. So what I want to do is, last time I said everyone must choose out of so many, and there's just too many groups, but I just want 4 groups now. So I want you to make up your mind which of these groups you want. I want to form teams of people that will work out of these 4: economic and employment, economic infrastructure, improving education and training, and innovation, and fighting corruption. And decide in your mind right now, where are you going to like to be part of the team? We want to form 4 teams. ULP now is so Theo, we're doing quite a lot of things other than just these events. This event is just a platform. 4 teams that are going to focus on these areas. So let me get a sense of those who would be interested in the first one, economy and employment. Right? There's too many people, eh? Well, just all right, keep you down. That means those who are interested in infrastructure. Okay, great. Those who are interested in improving education, training, and innovation. Wow, great. Those who are repentant to fight corruption. Okay? Choose one, please. Choose one. Because what I want to do after this is that normally after the end of this session, we all come and greet each other and come and greet our speaker and shake hands. But I want you to do that for only about 10 minutes or so. I want each decide right now, if you're in economy or economic infrastructure, I want you, when you leave this place, thank God today is Friday, so we're not rushing to tomorrow. Normally we have these events on Thursday, so everybody wants to run. So tomorrow is Saturday, so you can chill out a little bit. We've prepared rooms in the ULP house of these 4 groups. And you will be led by Theo and Mandla and Mugelane. They will take you to that group. And now listen very carefully what I want you to do, because I want to create a movement that will focus on implementing NDP. We've got too many policies here now. We just need to choose one and just implement. And there's a whole country trying to do it, but ULP, let's play a little bit our place, our role in the area in which we are. So go up to the next slide. Spa. Yeah. These are the instructions. Break into 4 groups based on the identified focus area that you have. So you've already chosen your area. And then what I want you when you're in those groups to identify 2 or 3 priority action or item that needs to be done in order to make sure that that happens. Remember, I sent you, most of you have received, how many of you have received yeah. And then decide who will do what by when. And then prepare a presentation to deliver at the next ULP session. So in the next ULP session, we'll have a little bit of time where maybe have 1 or 2 groups that are ready just to share what they are doing or what they're planning to do. At some point, we will feed into the National Planning Commission. We will also invite the leadership of the National Planning Commission to come here, because each one of us must make a contribution. And so in that group, when you are there, for today, because it's a start, just you'll have a piece of paper where you've got all your names and addresses, form a WhatsApp group, select a convener of the group, and then from there start talking to each other throughout the whole month, so that when we meet next you've got something. If you want to decide to meet here to arrange and have that group discussion alone during the week or one of the Saturday or Sunday, just phone Theo. We'll make this venue available for you. If you want to meet at your offices or at your own boardrooms, please do that and invite as many people to participate in gaining this momentum of implementing this. We only have 14 years to go. It's a very short space of time. Are we together? Are you with me? Are you committing? No, I want people to show commitment. You know how I want. Are you with me, show by show of hands? Yeah? Yeah, I can see. No, you see, some of us are used to making sure that people commit right up front. Now let me introduce our speaker. Phuthuma. I've known Phuthuma for many, many years. We've been together at the beginning in the oil game, and we share a vision which we say one day, before we go and be with the Lord, we have a vision of creating a major. You see, I say these things on record. Black-owned, black-controlled institution in the oil and gas or energy sector. So, because we've spent almost all our working life in that space. He's also diversified extensively. But he's a chairman and a co-founder of Pembane Group. Pembane was formed in 1994. It's become a very successful BE startup company. And I think it moved from worldwide into Pembane. And as you know, most of the assets of our current deputy president have been bought by Pembane. And Pembane focuses on cement, resources, energy-focused investment holding. He was a chairman of MTN, and he retired. And then MTN faced a major challenge, and he was called back. As a CEO, he tells me now that he's almost there to appoint the CEO, and then from there, he's going to regain his life again. He's up until last month, has been on BP PLC. You know what PLC means? Does it mean BP South Africa? It means BB globally, worldwide. He was on the board of that up until last month, and he says he only retired because he wants to have his life back. He was also a PLC Anglo-America. So that's a great achievement. Let's give him a round of applause. And that's what Unleashing Leadership Potential is about, is that you dream big. Not only, we all grew up in townships, in Katlewong, national, international, globally. That's where we need to be. He was a CEO of MTN, and I salute him for that because he built a major company there. He's been on directorships, Nedbank, Old Mutual, Jonic, Bidvest, Alexander Forbes. And as we say in ULP, we encourage people who've studied. So he has done an MBA at Atlanta University, and is a qualified civil engineer from Ohio State University. Phuthuma, over to you.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say it's really an honor and a privilege to stand in front of you. Maurice told me about Unleashing Leadership Potential probably about 18 months ago. And he invited me to come and share some views and my own little life history with you. And I agreed to do that. But most unfortunately, on 2 occasions, I could not honor that due to some circumstances beyond my control. So I apologize for that. But nonetheless, I am here in front of you today. As I have been advised, this is almost a 2-aspect discussion. One is to give just a little bit of history on oneself, and then more importantly, contextualize that history in addressing the issue of leadership, which is a big topic, broad topic. And I guess if you had 10 people up here, you'd get 10 different versions of what leadership is. My own life started in Guatemala, in Springs, in the early 60s, where my father used to work for, I think those days it was called Liver Brothers, and eventually became Unilever. My mother is from Attridgeville in Pretoria. At one stage, after studying in UNISA, he got a scholarship, my father, to go and study in the US. It was the African Methodist Church. And that's how he ended up in Indiana and ended up doing a master's in sociology there. Then, of course, when he came back, 65, 66, I think during those days, as a black person with a degree in sociology, there wasn't too much for you to do here. And that's how we ended up resettling in Swaziland. And I eventually managed to get to the US. And I think as you've seen from the short bio, I started civil engineering at Ohio State University. And eventually graduated, worked in the States for a few years, came back. At that stage, I think there were very few black civil engineers in South Africa. In fact, I think you had to get permission from the Department of Education to study civil engineering, let alone work as an engineer. With all your degrees. So I worked in Swaziland for 2 years, building roads, infrastructure, and so on. And once I was doing that, it came to me to say, you know, I'm actually quite inadequate as regards the financial aspects of contracting. And that is when I decided to go and do an MBA. And of course, if you recall, in the 80s, the combination of MBA and engineering was very much in vogue. So I went back to the US, did that. And as I got the combination of engineering and investment banking was actually at its apex. I think the investment bankers found out, with all due respect to the accountants in the room, that if you want a great investment banker, you must get the engineers. And in a sense, I do understand why. I think it is very much a resolution-oriented discipline as opposed to a structured discipline like accountancy and so on. And I take nothing away from the CAs and the CFAs. But it was great. And then on coming back into South Africa, this was now 1990, I worked at Standard Merchant Bank as an investment banker. At that stage, I think it was probably myself and a gentleman called Joe Makobe, who were the only black people in investment banking then. He was at First Corp, and so on. One thing led to the next, and I'm really compressing 30 years into 5 minutes. And I then went and started a company called Worldwide African Investment Holdings. It was myself. I don't know if you recall, he's now late, God bless his soul, Max Marcella. Yeah. Max Marcella, myself, Ngula, Kai Ngula, and Professor Nkutlu. And quite frankly, we started off with 20,000 rand. It's all documented, it is all there. And next thing is we had to bond our houses and so on and so on. So I can tell a long story on that. And eventually in 2000, and I think in 2000, we had built up a balance sheet and we were keen to try and buy Nail. Nail was a BE group that was started by Dr. Maklana and the Chief Justice, or Deputy Chief Justice, who just retired this week, Tegang Mseneke. And those who have got long enough memories will remember that we thought the deal was all done and all of that. And one Sunday evening, they had a meeting, and I lost out on that deal, and the deal went to Mr. Saki Makozoma. I mean, this is all public information. I'm not too sure what happened to Nail after that, but anyway, that's a different discussion. I was then asked to come and chair MTN because MTN had been part of Jonic. And as I said, this is a long story. I could write a book about that. So I agreed to chair MTN 2000, 2001. 2001 at the end, they said, well, you've been a great chairman, why don't you become CEO? So I'm going the wrong direction now. So I agreed to do that. And at that stage, it was just South Africa, I think Uganda, and maybe Swaziland. And we grew MTN from that into 22 countries in Africa and the Middle East. It became effectively the fourth largest company in South Africa. The other three were all listed in London. They'd moved. It was Richmond, SAB, Miller, and so on. And as I say, that in itself is quite a long story. You know, that journey of 10, 11 years, stretching all the way from South Africa to Nigeria to Afghanistan to Syria, is a story in itself, which I'd be more than happy to share with you, one day. I don't think we have the time to do it today. So that is really, I think, my history in a nutshell. If I have to come back to really the essence of today's topic, which is unleashing leadership potential, I made an effort of trying to reflect in a manner that I could try and have a concise view, as relatively concise as I can, on my perception of what leadership potential is. And I guess every book on leadership will give you a different perspective. And I think on reflecting on that, I ended up with, shall I say, 7 cardinal points that I thought were pivotal. The first one is a worldview. I do think that unless you have a worldview, it is difficult to deal with the other 6 steps. And to have that worldview, I think a good sense of history and a good sense of economics is essential. And just not to be misunderstood, I'm not therefore saying, you have to go into school and study history and go and study economics. You'll be amazed at the number of self-educated people who've never really been into any tertiary institution of any sort, but have made it their business to educate themselves and end up with a coherent view of the world. Because without a coherent worldview, I don't think you can formulate anything. I don't think you can formulate a cohesive foreign policy for a country, for instance, if your worldview is disaggregated and not coherent and not composite. So I think that is very, very, very important. That's item number 1. Item number 2 is then vision. Having had a composite worldview, what is your vision? And most enormous and fantastic achievements always start with a vision. And that vision can come in many forms. It can come as Akhenaten did, for instance, who was the first pharaoh to believe in a single god, which was the sun in his particular case. Radical. So you've had all these pharaoh dynasties for thousands of years. And here comes Akhenaten and says, no, we are actually going to have one God. Okay, in his particular case, it was the sun. Absolutely radical change. And the consequences of that is history lessons for years and years that we can discuss. Einstein did not do an empirical experiment to come with the formula E is equal mc squared. It was vision. Now, I'm not saying he just woke up. Yes, he was a scientist working the Technikon in Germany and so on. But, and I don't think, by the way, him being appointed or nominated as person of the century, you may remember year 2000, he was on Time magazine as the person of the century. Personally, I fully agree with that. Here is somebody conceptually, right, through a lot of thinking, not empirical experiment, but a lot of it was insight. Yes, he had some basics to use with it, but he arrived at that formula in an intuitive manner. And it's vision. And I can go on and on and on and on. I mean, those who study the Bible, and I'm not pretending to be an authority by any stretch of the imagination, but will know that if Paul didn't basically take a view on reestablishing Christianity, we probably would not be sitting around here. So there's a whole series of people that have a vision that is actually cogent. It starts off with a worldview, and then you have the vision. Then I'd move on to item 3. Now you've got a vision. You can have a vision and remain on your bench indefinitely and nothing will happen. You need a framework. And whether you are a politician who decides you're going to be EFF, or you are a general who decides we need to annex this land, or you are, take whatever entrepreneur that you want, who's the guy who does Virgin? Branson. There is a framework there. There had to be a conceptualized framework of saying, how do I go from a vision to a framework? And that framework deals with every possible resource and how you deploy that resource within that framework in order to achieve the vision. Then in my view, I think you go to item 4, which is capability and quality of individuals. Out of everything that I have tried to do in my short life, I have found that even when there may be an error in the framework, if you have the right capability and capacity from a people perspective, it really makes a big difference. You can have a poor idea and great capability and excellent people, you will eventually get there. It may go through a zigzag, and you may eventually get there. You can have an absolutely fantastic vision, a flawless framework, but if your judgment of people and choice of people is poor, you achieve nothing. So, in my mind, part of that element 4 of capability and quality is the whole issue of judgment. I mean, there's somebody who I wasn't a fan of. She once said something that I actually thought, well, she's actually right on this. And that was Margaret Thatcher, who I used to really detest for all sorts of reasons. But she used to say, you know, at any day, she'd rather have somebody who's got excellent judgment than somebody who's brilliant. And I absolutely agree with that. The number of people that I've met whose capability is beyond question, but have got poor judgment, basically mean that the capability aspect of your framework and eventually your vision doesn't come to pass. Then I'd come to item 5. So you've got your vision, you've got the framework, you've now employed the best people that you can, whether it's a political party, whether it's an army, whether it's a business, or whatever it is. You've now amassed close to you some very capable people, and you're ready to move forward. And you need to get input. Now, I honestly believe strong leaders surround themselves with absolutely strong and difficult people. And weak leaders surround themselves with weak people. And the reason is one of deeper sense of confidence and input. And personally, I believe in what they call the Socrates method, where you can sit in a boardroom or in whatever forum and you can have all the answers, and you tell, you must do this, Simpiwe, you must do that. No, Maurice, you must do that. Or you can just keep on asking questions, and that's how Socrates used to behave philosophically. Make input by asking questions, and you still get input. But the difference is that you get genuine input from those people. And you also even get contrarian views. Once you start closing out the contrarian views, and that is the beginning of the end. I mean, taking MTN as an example, we moved from a very localized South African provincial mentality, all right? By the time I left in 2011, we had like 50,000 employees, maybe 35, 45 different nationalities. How somebody thinks from KZN is quite different from how somebody from Kabul in Afghanistan think, right? It's a totally different culture, and for you to have that ability to absorb that culture and be a listening post, I think you definitely emit and amass and end up with the best sort of decisions. So that point 5 really is just, I just call it the Socrates method of keep on asking the questions, do the listening, as opposed to give instructions. Depending on the manner in which you ask those questions, you effectively are giving instructions. Then I think item 6, on leadership is taking the difficult decisions. I do think that we're all human, we've all got a very strong emotional side to us, but at times you have to do some very, very, very difficult things. Those who have run companies, I'm sure the day that you fired the first person in your life, you went home and you couldn't sleep, right? Because you felt, what an awful thing I've done. But tough decisions and difficult decisions are essentially at the core of leadership. I'm sure you've met people. They don't have to be people running companies, even in your close circle. There's some people who just don't like difficult situations, right? When they have to deal with a difficult matter, they rather run away. On 5, he doesn't pitch up. Because they know that you are going to put them in a difficult situation, right? And it's human beings. And I know even very senior people that have got a lot of experience, when they have to take that difficult call to say, Maurice, no, sorry, we cannot do this. I apologize, but we cannot do this. There's some people who are just incapable of doing that. They will run around and you never see them until you get the message through osmosis that maybe he's not interested. That's not leadership. It's how do you take those difficult decisions that might be unpopular, but as long as you are comfortable that they're well thought out, they're fair, and they're in the long-term interest of the organization, whether it be a business or political or church or whatever it is. Just have to pray for the wisdom of Solomon in those kind of calls. Then I think the 7th and last aspect is the issue of fairness and integrity, because out of everything that I've said in the first 6 points, we are not infallible. We are given at times to impulsiveness and even on occasion a sense of the heart ruling the mind. If you weren't that, then you'd be a robot. But you always, at all times, have to have this internal self-correcting mechanism that you need to try and deploy to say, have I really been fair to X, Y, Z? I have to take this decision. And this, in a business sense, sometimes it will affect the family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't take that decision lightly. So a sense of fairness and, of course, integrity is absolutely the common thread that runs through everything that I've said, in the sense that whether you like it or not, you lead by example. And if you don't set the gold standard yourself, you de facto undermine the ability to say anything to anybody that is a value judgment. And we take these things for granted, but these are true. Because if you don't do that, it spreads, and it spreads like cancer. And Maurice, it was just very interesting, one of the slides that you put up there, it was about corruption, and it just brought a small little anecdote I have on something that happened. I think it was in 2002 or 3, where we were having problems in Nigeria at MTN, and I went to see then President Obasanjo. And I remember that discussion. I mean, we of course spoke the business and all the problems that we're having and so on. Then we started talking generally about, you know, how are things in South Africa and so on. And he said to me, you know, the day that corruption starts in South Africa, it will spread like cancer. You will not be able to stop it. And so we listened to him, etc., etc. It was myself. In fact, I was with the current deputy president. He was chairman's, MTN's chairman at the time. So when we left, our attitude was, it's just another jealous West African, jealous of South Africa, because in 2002, 2003, you know, everything was on the up, everything was flying. Honestly, I sit today and I remember those words from him, because what you described there is exactly what he was warning of, but they had seen it for the last 30 years. So it was, I think, an apt example of coming back to my point 7, which is integrity from a leadership perspective is totally indispensable, because unless that is embedded, you then fail to control how everything else basically evolves. It just comes outside your control of issues. So I think those really are my personal 7 cardinal points. I'm not saying, therefore, this is the Holy Grail and the Holy Word. No, I'm saying that I would judge the unleashing of leadership to be premised on those 7 things in that particular sequence, because I think if they're not in that particular sequence, I would question whether there is any roadmap that you're actually following. Not to say you'll get there, but at least I think this gives a roadmap. I could go on for 2 hours, but I was given 20 minutes or so, and I just thought at least let me share that little bit. And I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.